He is an author of memoir, essay, and other nonfiction, including his Bert Betterman blog.
That's correct.
You have to say that slowly.
Mm-hmm.
He left his 14-year career as an investment professional to become a full-time fishing guide on Lake Sakakawea?
Close enough. Sakakawea.
Sakakawea,
Yep.
okay, in North Dakota, where he spends half the year. He spends his winters in Iowa focusing on writing and other content creation, including his YouTube channel for his fishing business. And his book has been described as laced with gentle, self-deprecating humor, keen insight, and skillfully painted word pictures of life, both on and off the water. So whether you're looking to find yourself, recreate yourself, or just need a vicarious escape from the tedium of life, this relatable story of adventure is sure to inspire you. And Brett's genuine yet mildly irreverent style will have you laughing one page, crying the next, and giving you a sense of hope for your own personal journey. So, thanks for coming tonight, and a warm welcome for Brett.
So yeah, thank you, Jan. Thanks to Beaverdale Books for allowing me to be here. This is a pretty cool thing, and I thought this was going to be the most stressful thing I was going to do today. Until this morning when I surprisingly had to buy a new vehicle. I don't know if anybody's ever had to surprisingly buy a new vehicle, but that happened. And then I got that taken care of, and I thought, okay, that's good. That'll be a fun story for tonight. And then 2 minutes before I got on the road, I got a call from the U.S. Bank Fraud Department. And somebody hacked into my bank account. So I took care of that and then screamed down here on the interstate and made it in time, thankfully. So important thing is I'm here, I think, mostly. But none of that is part of the show. So let's get on to more important business. So yeah, anyway, if you don't know me, my name is Brett Bloemendaal, as she said. I'm an author and I'm also a fishing guide, and I was an investment analyst. And that is kind of the story of the book and the reason why I'm here today in a sense, because for 15 years of my life, I was just kind of following the path that I had set for myself based on my major in college and all of that kind of stuff. And things seemed to be fine. Everything was going okay. It was all well and good. I was, I suppose following a traditional path of life. You go to college, you get a job, and then you make some money, and then you have money to do certain things. And as time went by, some of that stuff started to change for me, and that's the meat of what this book is like how I went through that experience of discovering that I was potentially going down a path that not necessarily the wrong path, but a path that wasn't congruent with me any longer. So as I was trying to think about what exactly I was going to say tonight, as I often do, I went down to Jester Park, took a hike, and there's a spot as you get all the way out there by Saylorville Lake. There's like basically, I'll call it like an inlet, like a smaller part of the river that flows into the bigger part of the reservoir. And also this is kind of a microcosm of my other job, because Sakakawea is a reservoir of the Missouri River. So Saylorville is kind of like my local Sakakawea, which is why I go down there all the time. But anyway, I'm sitting down there and I'm looking at the water, and it's a pretty windy day. And the wind's blowing one direction, which is creating waves going this way. And if you just kind of look at the surface of the water, you would think the river's flowing this direction because it seems like the water's moving this way. But if you look a little closer at the water, and this is something I also do a lot as a fishing guide in terms of trying to figure out where I want to go fish and what I want to do for the day, you could actually kind of see how the water was kind of crashing into itself because the current underneath was moving this direction. So in reality, the current's moving one way, even if you look at the surface and it appears that it's moving another way. And it almost seemed like the water in the middle was kind of stalling right in the middle, right? And I started to think of, a lot of times I'll go down there when I'm struggling with an idea for something, and it'll kind of hit me in these moments just kind of out by myself, by the lake in nature. And this was one of those, because I was like, that is exactly the situation I felt like I was in about 4 or 5 years ago. I felt like I was going the direction I was supposed to be going, but I was struggling incredibly hard to barely tread water, if not somewhat slipping backwards, and I wasn't exactly sure why. Because I wasn't present enough to notice that the current of my life had changed, I think. So I feel like this is something that happens very easily, especially in current day society, just because it's so easy to kind of, with everything that's going on and all the distractions in life, to live basically on autopilot and just kind of wake up in the morning, go about the checklist, get things done, and not really stop to think about what's really happening, what's really changing, what is it that I really want, and kind of reassess, you know, is there something that's different? Is there something that's more, for example? I was talking with my brother the other day, and we were filming this thing for the YouTube channel in Florida, and we decided to take a hike down there as well. We were just looking for something to do to kind of get away from the house and get away from the rest of the family for a while. It was a family vacation, and as we were hiking, he just happened to spit out this throwaway line that he said, you know, fishing is just a really good way to interact with nature. And I was like, hold on a minute, let me turn my phone on and say that again. And it became part of the video, because what he was getting at was the fact that, like, it's neat to just kind of walk in nature, the same like if you're taking a hike in Jester Park, or if I'm walking down by the lake. But there's something about fishing that, like he said, you interact with it on a deeper level. You're not just observing nature, but you're part of it. So when I started to really struggle with my job, some of the frustrations that I was having of feeling stuck in life also became physical things. And I started to struggle a lot with my body physically, with my health. I wound up going to a number of different doctors. And sometimes it's even, like, occasionally hard to talk about, as you can tell. But there's something that was missing from my life for a long time. And to back up a little bit, when I was a little kid, I was a huge fisherman. Ever since I was, like, I don't know, 3 years old, 2 years old. I got a picture, and it's in the book, of me standing on a dock holding up like a 4-inch perch, like the proudest little kid in the world, right? And my dad and my grandpa always took me fishing. My mom did some as well. She tried as hard as she could, but she didn't have quite the same insights and knowledge that my dad and my grandpa did. But point being, I was a huge fisherman, and every chance I got, that's what I wanted to do. I would bug my dad relentlessly to try to take more trips out to the Missouri River, which is where I currently guide. And then it got to the point where, you know, life changed a little bit. My dad wound up getting remarried after my parents divorced. He wound up having another set of kids, and priorities changed, and he wound up selling his boat. And then soon after that, I went off to college and kind of forgot about it for a while. And it was probably, I don't know, 7 years ago at this point. For some reason, I just got this idea that we needed to go on a fishing trip again. So I ended up talking to my dad, and we got it hooked up, and we found a boat that we could borrow from another uncle of ours. And then we went fishing with my cousin and my uncle in their boat. And something just clicked for me. It's like everything started to come back, and everything felt good and right and lighter and easier on me all of a sudden again. And I knew that I had missed something. It's like the instant I felt those things, it's like all this stuff started coming back that I didn't even think about for so many years, right? And you know, physical difficulties that I was having day and day after being on the water would start to kind of fade away a little bit. And I got this sense that we needed to do more of this. And the other thing that occurred around the same period of time was this was shortly after my grandfather had died. And both of my grandparents on my dad's side died of some version of Alzheimer's, dementia, Lewy body disease, Parkinson's, that sort of thing. And with the physical struggles that I was having, a lot of it started to remind me of like the way my grandfather was when he was dealing with his Parkinson's. And I don't know if any of that's connected or not, but it started to make me worry about, you know, how much time do I have left with my own dad? How much time do I have left to be physically capable of doing the things I want to do that would make me happy in life? So basically we went on this fishing trip, and as we're coming home, I just kind of looked at my dad and I kind of gave him this look, and I think he was telepathically telling me exactly what I was thinking in my head, that we need to get a boat together. And getting that boat was kind of the beginning of finding this back, and eventually led to the point where I decided I need to do this for a living. I need to do it as often as I can possibly do it because it just feels right. The one thing that's different now, I think, is that even though I feel like I'm on the right path and doing the right things, like I think some people get the impression that it's kind of like a happily ever after sort of thing, right? It's like, okay, great, you did your thing that you were wanting to do, and now life is amazing and you don't have any struggles and all that kind of stuff, which isn't obviously true. It's still difficult at times, it's still complicated, but they're challenges that I look forward to, and they're challenges that I get more reward from completing, I would say. But the other side of that coin was, in order to get to that process, like I said, there was a gap in time where I didn't fish a whole lot. There was a gap in time where my dad and I didn't have some of these things. And once we started doing them again, I felt like there was this awkward period of catch-up time, because typically your dad would teach you how to do these things. For example, maintaining, running, backing in, using a boat when you're a kid. And now it was like we have to go through this stuff when I'm like 27 years old instead. And it's just this weird moment of like, yeah, he's my dad, but I'm also an adult, and he's probably thinking the same thing, and nobody really knows who is supposed to do what and say what. And he doesn't want to be too domineering, and I don't want to be too like doing things that I'm not sure what to do yet. So there's this weird push and pull thing going on back then. And there's another chunk in the book that kind of illustrates that well. There's this chapter called Who's the Captain, which is basically like us trying to figure out, now that we're going fishing again, is he the captain? Is he driving the boat? Am I the captain now? Am I driving the boat? And some people have asked me occasionally if I've ever had any near-death experiences. This is the only one that I can never come up with. So this is right after we bought our first boat together, by the way. It was hard waiting until spring to use the thing, but finally in May, I made a trip up to Dad's place. We decided to head over to Spirit Lake, which is one of the Iowa Great Lakes, to test the boat out for the first time and hopefully catch a few fish in the process. After arriving at the ramp, we prepped the boat for launch. I have this nagging feeling I should be doing more, that I should be taking charge more as a grown-up, but I still didn't know what the heck to do. I was just waiting for instructions from Dad, like I always did as a kid. At this point, it was still his show exclusively until he brought me into it. Step by step, we walk through things, and then he starts backing it into the water. This particular boat trailer had a set of rollers as opposed to the bunk setup. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody, but some boats, it's basically like a carpeted set of rails, and others has rollers. And I think you can see where this is going potentially. It's supposed to be for ease of launch, so that once the boat starts floating or is in somewhat of an incline, it should fly right back off the trailer without much effort. After we got our boat into the water and had the engine fired up, we still couldn't get it to release from the trailer. There was something we had missed. Dad tells me to pull the boat back out of the water. I scooted up just enough to get on dry land and get a bit past the steep incline of the ramp. We walk around to the back of the boat and realize the problem: tie-down straps. So there are two straps on the back fastening the hull of the boat to the trailer to prevent it from coming off, which is a good thing. They have to be released before the boat can be released as well. Again, I didn't know diddly from anything, and Dad had never owned a trailer with these tie-down straps. No problem, no big deal, easy fix. In the process of attempting to launch the boat, we had unhooked the chain and the winch strap from the front of the trailer while it was in the water. Dad had told me to pull the boat out of the water, so I had done exactly that. One of his fatal flaws is making assumptions of people. My fatal flaw was trusting he knew exactly what we needed to do and was going to tell me word for word. Neither one of us hooked the boat back up in front of the trailer. Still standing at the back of the boat, we each decided to unhook a strap from either side. I heard his pop first, a little more violently than it normally would, and then I unhooked mine and the boat started flying backwards straight at me. For some crazy unknown cuss word reason, my first instinct was to catch the boat instead of getting the heck out of the way. After the boat's initial lunge in our direction, it stopped. Did we actually catch it? Were we holding on to it? Dad yells at me, "You got it?" I said, "I think so." I grunted, leaning forward into the boat with all my weight. Like the flash, he runs around to the front and latches the boat. "We're hooked," he yells, and then I let go. So many thoughts were running through my mind at that point. Was it actually our efforts that stopped it from coming off the trailer? The initial part of the roller bed is steep to get the boat to start moving, but then flattens out toward the back end. It's quite possible, since we were on fairly flat ground, that the boat simply had stopped itself when it reached the back end of the rollers. Had we still been on the incline of the ramp, I honestly don't know if our efforts would have held anything. I honestly don't know if I would have actually moved out of the way or continued to try to catch the boat. It's entirely possible that over 1,000 pounds of aluminum would have pulverized me before I ever got a chance to use it. So yeah, I'm a lot better now. I know what I'm doing. So if you do take a fishing trip, you shouldn't die. There's one more part that I do want to read in here, especially since there are some people in here that haven't bought the book, and if they're still thinking about it. I just want to read the introduction, because I wrote the introduction kind of to set the tone for what the book is going to be, obviously, like most introductions, but basically as an invitation to kind of open yourself up to that own sort of journey like I did. Try to put yourself back into your little 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old kid's shoes and see the same world with a fresh perspective, I guess. So I'm gonna read that first, and then we're gonna maybe talk about some Q&A kind of stuff. So way back to a time when you were a little person, gliding weightlessly across the grass, then maybe even the sandy shores of a river, a lake, or an ocean. Perhaps you can smell the sun baking on your skin, or the dew evaporating off the ground, and the trees pulling all the scents of nature toward your nose in a cocktail of life's flavors. You gather rocks for your pockets, or pick dandelions, maybe even cast a line into the water to see if something will bite, or just watch fish play at the surface. Sit with it for a while and notice how you feel. What comes back to you? Are they things that you forgot but now seem so familiar? It's you, unfiltered and pure. You're not acting or playing a part. You aren't working to meet expectations. You're just being you. Do things seem different? Can you feel priorities shifting within you? Suddenly what seems set in stone may become surprisingly malleable even after all those years and all those walks down well-worn paths. Now, can you meld that unbridled childlike adventure with the knowledge and resources of your adult self? We often say, if only I knew what I knew then. Well, all of those past selves are still part of you in spirit. You know what you know now, and part of you is still who you were then. At any moment, you could choose to change your path with your next step, whether a major overhaul or a subtle shift, tweaking your way to a better tomorrow. As you stare at the water, the sun warm on your back, the horizon sprawling endlessly in front of you, and knowing your adult self can now take the reins of its own destiny, what do you want to do? Is there a fresh path calling your name?